2 days ago, a Chinese rocket came back from space and stood itself up in the desert. That looks like the finish line, but it is not. Landing a booster is one hard problem. Flying that same booster again, soon, and then again after that is a real problem. This video is about the difference. Here is what we actually know. On the 19th of August, a private Chinese company called LandSpace launched Zhuque-3. This was its second flight. It lifted off from the commercial launch site at Zhuque-1. About 2 minutes later, the first stage and the second stage separated. The second stage put the satellite into orbit. The first stage then turned around, slowed itself down, came back through the atmosphere, and landed on four legs. It touched down on a concrete pad in Minqin in Gansu, about 390 kilometers away from the launch site. It landed upright, soft landing. That is China's first time bringing an orbital rocket booster home on land. It is also the first time China has done it with landing legs, the same basic idea SpaceX uses on Falcon 9. This was not their first try though. Zhuque-3 first flew in December last year. It reached orbit, the landing failed, and the booster hit the ground hard near the pad. So this flight matters because they tried again and this time it stood up. But what has not happened yet? This booster has not flown again. The company says it wants to reuse it in about 6 months. That is the plan, but it is not done yet. And this is not even China's first booster recovery. On the 10th of July, a different rocket, the Long March 10B, built by a state company, brought its first stage home at sea. It was caught in the net on a ship. That booster did not use landing legs. The ship did the catching. 6 weeks later, a private company does it in other way. Legs on the rocket, landing on land. Same country, two different methods. Catching it at sea can keep the rocket simpler. Landing on legs means you do not need a special ship. Both can work. China has now shown it can do each of them once. Once is the word to remember. People hear reusable rockets and think the job is finished when it lands. But it is not. There are 4 steps. First, get it back in one piece. Second, check it, repair it, and clear it to fly. Third, fly the same first stage again. Fourth, keep doing that on a regular schedule. Weeks, not years. Zhuque-3 has done step 1. The other 3 are still ahead. That is normal. That is how this actually works. Falcon 9 is the one that has already walked that whole path. First orbital landing was in 2015. 10 years later, SpaceX has landed boosters more than 650 times. Some of those boosters have flown more than 30 times. And the fastest turnaround is about only 9 days. That is not a demo, that is a routine. Blue Origin is somewhere in the middle. Their big rocket New Glenn landed at sea in late 2025. They flew a used booster for the first time in April this year. Then they had a pad explosion during a test in May, and they are trying to get back to flight by the end of the year. So they have landed, they have reused once, but it is not regular yet. Zhuque-3 has now done the same first thing Falcon 9 and New Glenn did. Land an orbital booster on legs after a real launch. A few other rockets are being built for this, but they have not done it yet. A lot of teams can talk about reuse, very few have landed and only one is doing it every week. Now a few points on how this rocket compares. Zhuque-3 is a similar kind of machine to Falcon 9. It has stainless steel body, it uses methane and oxygen for fuel, and it has 9 engines at the bottom. It is built so the first stage can fly again. The company says about 20 times. How much it can carry is where people get confused. When you bring the first stage home, you always lose some lifting power. That is true for every reusable rocket, including Falcon 9. This version of Zhuque-3 lifts less than Falcon 9. There is a bigger version planned. So for now, just remember same idea as Falcon 9, not the same workhorse yet. They choose methane because it burns cleaner, which should make reuse easier. They chose steel because it is tough and cheaper to work with. Both are smart bets, but neither one replaces the next test, which is flying this booster again. So why does one landing in the desert matter? Because for a long time only the United States had done this with orbital rockets. That is no longer true. In 6 weeks, China has come home 2 ways, a net at sea and legs on land. More ways to get the booster back over time means more launches and cheaper access to orbit. That is what satellite internet and big constellations need. That is the real prize. The question has changed. It is no longer can anyone except SpaceX land a booster? They can. The question now is who can check it, fly it again, and keep doing that. That is the same question no matter where you are watching from. China landed an orbital booster on land on its own legs for the first time. That is a real milestone. They missed it once, got it the second time. That is how this works. The next thing I'm watching is simple. Does this booster fly again? Does the one they caught at sea fly again? When that happens, recovery becomes reuse. If you want that update when it happens, please subscribe.